sure. Yeah.
Hi there, everybody in Moreland Teach Now land. I am very grateful today to be joined by my mentor, who is going to be giving me some feedback on my baseline video. I was very fortunate that my mentor actually sat in the classroom with me and was able to observe an unedited, unfiltered view of my lessons. So, without any further ado, here is my mentor.
It was an honor to observe your lesson.
Thank you.
I've been pleased to know you, Mr. Hoots, and it was an inspiration to see how you took this InTask Standard 1 really to heart with a pretty convincing knowledge of cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and physical needs of learners. You managed to integrate all of those quite proficiently, indeed. Let's start with cognitively. Cognitively, 11 to 12-year-olds, they're getting into that adult mindset of thinking where critical thinking is important. That self-awareness, being able to activate prior knowledge, apply it to a task, understand what they really know. And I love the way you did it. At the beginning of the lesson, you showed them the vocabulary and just elicited what they knew, parts of words, okay, which also ties into the linguistic element as well. It's like, how do you know suffixes, parts of speech, what prior knowledge can you use to make sense of these words? They were really quite effectively done. And then in terms of how you went about allowing the kids to actually learn the material, so understand, encode, retrieve, and then apply all of those steps. So I liked the flow of the lesson where you had the kids do the whack-a-mole. This again integrates another element here of the physicality, right? Getting up and moving, right? Also, that same task engaged the social element, that a social need of tweens, early teens particularly, is a sense of fitting in, right? And so they're all working together cooperatively. I was inspired by this because I've used WordWall before, but I've always had more discrete, like individuals coming up and then down, not groups using it. And that was actually an effective assessment tool, just to see, okay, who's pressing the most buttons? Are the kids working together? And an immediate palpable sense of achievement when they were actually getting the points and scoring and working together. I thought there might be one or two students that would dominate, but actually it was quite equitable and really cool to see. So a good social team building, and further that ties into an emotional element, that an understanding that when kids can succeed together at something in a group, that it builds self-esteem, right? It builds a sense of positivity and some teacher immediacy as well, because it shows the students that you empathize with them. It's like, we're kids, we want to have fun, and your ability to take something potentially boring and sterile and turn it into something that's that's fun, but yet part of a defensible, important part of the encoding process.
Great. Thank you.
Further, with moving on to a higher sort of Bloomian category of more abstract ability to apply higher order thinking skills. That part was was fairly well done. I like the idea that you gave the kids the paragraph to work with. I like the idea of valuation. That what do you value against sort of an abstract idea, a way to apply. I was a little bit nervous on the linguistic and cognitive front, and I struggle with this too when we're dealing with ELL learners in particular, how we take tasks like creating an argument or something persuasive, and then giving them the language tools to actually do that. As native speakers, it's quite easy for us to just assume that kids can argue for their own opinion. But given an Asian context of kids being more hesitant to offer their opinions, coupled with some of the language limitations of maybe not as uniform as we would like, an ability to use expressive language to give an argument or to give a point in a way that is linguistically apt, and perhaps a little more structuring.
Yes.
Examples. It's like, students, here's a sentence pattern I want.
Yes.
And also a chance to use some boring grammar stuff which is already been embedded in the previous unit. Like, for example, hey, let's make compound sentences here. And with what kind of conjunctions can we use? Here's a great chance to use compare and contrast, which accords to higher order thinking skills, being able to compare. So maybe a bit more scaffolding would be great.
Fantastic.
Overall, I think the cognitive piece for me was probably the most important. I've touched on the linguistic aspects. The social, again, great bonding.
Yes.
I liked the way particularly you combine the extrinsic, intrinsic motivation balance. You had individual students, right? And again, a nice way to assess, right? You had the group, level of scoring, which builds social cohesion, builds that sense of cooperative learning between social groups, between the groups of students, and then the whole class.
The whole class,
So you had these three levels of intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, kind of beautifully woven together, and I thought that was effective. And emotionally, I think kids were engaged because of the structure of the lesson, the way in which they were allowed to be included, the way they were allowed to do some playing, the way they were allowed to balance group activity with individual activity, not feeling threatened by too much difficult individual work, not being threatened by having to perform in front of others. So in that way, being sensitive to the different emotional, psychological temperaments of some of the learners. The physicality part, finally, just a realization of the kinesthetic needs of learners and how that can actually help the learning process in the class. So,
Wow. Thank you so much for being my mentor. This is why I chose you. You have given me honest feedback. I really appreciate your opinion on everything that you have said today. And thank you for taking the time.
It's lovely.
So, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you again to my mentor. It's been an absolute pleasure. See you next time. Bye.